Right, then we thought it'd be a good idea this time to start off this session with just a recap of the assignments and assessment for participants of this course, how you get GMUL and how you get a grade and all that stuff. Well, GMUL I won't go into, but um, how this course is assessed. So we'll start off with reviewing assessment criteria, and then we'll talk about essay writing, first of all without reference to Bagrut, and then later on with reference to Bagrut. So let's start with course requirements and assessment then. And all this is at the top of the Moodle. I've uploaded everything you see on the screen here to the top of the Moodle, so you just click on that and you'll find it there. So first of all, attendance, you have to be at least 80% of the sessions, which means 8 out of the 10 sessions that we've had or we will have had by the end of the course. You should have done 5 short assignments. And basically, you get credit for them if you do them. When we're not actually giving very detailed grades on these courses, it's either pass or fail, except if something is particularly good, so we give it a 2. So it's 0 means either you didn't do it or you didn't, or it wasn't done well enough. 1 is the standard, which most people get for most of the assignments, and 2 is if it's for some reason outstandingly good or interesting or original. Then there's the final assignment, and here a couple of things I want to draw your attention to. First of all, we've shortened it. We've shortened it because you've done a lot of work already, and also because of the deadline, which is fairly close, and also because because I myself, with Gail's help, will be checking these essays, and it's a lot of work, so we shortened it a bit to make things a little bit easier on ourselves as well. So for all those reasons. And the essay relates to the following points. First of all, insights and content that particularly contributed, things which you felt were particularly meaningful to you and contributed to your professional knowledge and thinking. Critical reflections on selected topics. That means here we are saying, yes, you can disagree with things, or you can criticize things, say what you think from your point of view, things which either you don't agree with or you would like to develop further. Third thing is application in practice, either during the course, so you can write about things which you did while the course was going on, or you can write about things that you think you will apply next year in your teaching. And the fourth thing is overall conclusion, sort of a closing paragraph on your own takeaway, what in sum you felt you got out of this course, any further general reflections that you feel you want to share, not covered by what you've already written. Now, note, please, and this comes out of experience from the past, the essay should not include feedback. I don't want to read that this was a great course or this was an awful course. I want to read about yourselves and your own thinking, not about the course itself and feedback on the course. There will be an opportunity, of course, to provide feedback elsewhere. Okay, rules about submission, originality, of course. AI usage, happy for you to use AI to check your language, which is the thing which we all do, but not obviously to generate ideas, which should come from you. Formatting, cover page, I'll show you this in a moment, with all the necessary information on it. Text, I've defined the text, the font and size I'd like because it's easiest to read, and make sure there are clear divisions between sections. How you use headings and subheadings is up to you as long as they're clear and consistent. Bibliography, use APA, which we often do anyway. And and deadline. Now, the deadline is July the 15th, which is a month from today, which is fairly soon. The problem is that we have to submit it ourselves and the grades by the end of July. So if we don't get the essays by mid-July, we can't really do that, which is why the deadline is fairly soon. A month, you have a month from now, but I hope it is doable.
When will
The
it be open for submission?
I'll get onto that in a moment.
Sorry.
Just let me finish, and then I'll open to questions. Okay. The grading table, the rubric for essay assessment. Okay, so 70% goes on content, and you can read for yourself. As I say, it's already up on the Moodle as well, so you can look again to see how the essay will be assessed, and language and organization. So it's question of language. I expect there to be little problem with language, and the essay should be well structured, coherent, easy to read, and the length according to the word count, which I say is shorter than we originally planned, between 500 and 1200. 500 words is about a couple of A4 pages, more or less. So it's that sort of length. I've provided a sample cover page for you to use, just to make things easier on you for this. Okay. Yes, questions.
There are two questions in the chat here. Can we start to work on it and submit it
Yes,
before
let's look
July
out.
15?
Can we start to work it and submit it before July? Of course, as soon as you like. You can submit it tomorrow if you like.
But no, hang on, they haven't got anywhere to submit it yet. I
Oh,
need.
sorry.
I'll do
Well,
that and
so you
let you
can't
know.
yet. Gail will let you know when you can submit it, okay?
And
when do you think it'll be, Gail?
I need to check with the PISGA because sometimes they put up a feedback form that has to be filled in before you can upload the final assignment. But I'll check that with them.
And exactly how it's uploaded also, we need to
Like
provide
the
information on that.
assignments.
Sorry?
Like the assignments, it will be with
Okay.
to be able to attach a document.
Yes. Okay, so that'll be attaching a document rather than just writing in to the text.
The question here, can we do it in pairs?
No, the answer is no, you can't.
This is a reflection. You can't reflect
It
in
has to
pairs.
be individual.
And that's Miriam with the attendance form.
Okay.
Yes, Amy, you can submit whatever you're missing.
Yes.
No
You can
problem. Just
submit a
let us
task
know
for
that you
even if
submitted.
you weren't at the session. Yes, you can. Can we still do the short assignments? Of course, yes. Again, the deadline for short assignments is also July 15th because we really need to have everything in by then in order to start working on submitting grades and so on.
Right. And I forgot what I wanted to say. Never mind.
It'll come back to you.
Something, if any of you have a specific issue or problem or hand something in late, please send me an email so that I can keep track of it. Okay? If there was a session where you couldn't sign the attendance form, I've received tons of those, but I can
That's
check.
to send you personally, is that, Gail?
Yes, personally to my email, not to my WhatsApp. In my WhatsApp, it'll get lost. If you want it taken care of, please send it to my email, which I will write in
In the chat box.
the WhatsApp. It'll get lost in the chat box.
Can I
What
ask
is
a
the
question?
weight of the short assignments? Revital asked. It doesn't have weight, it's just a precondition that you have to have done 5 assignments for the in order to get a grade at all. And the grade is mainly determined by the by the final essay. I say mainly because if someone has done particularly outstanding short assignments, of course, we'll take that into account as well when we are giving the final grade. When can we see our attendance? I don't know, Gail. What's the answer to that?
Which one?
Where can we see our attendance?
Miriam has answered that. You should you get a copy of every attendance form you sign. It's in your updates in your Gmail or in your junk mail. Check your junk mail or your updates and you'll find it.
Can I ask a question about the AI?
Yeah.
If I don't want to use AI at all because I like my language, is that okay?
That's fine, David. I don't use it either.
No, because
Not for my own. I don't use it for my own writing or not
well,
normally.
I started writing and then I put it through AI, and I don't like the response of the AI.
And
I
it
prefer
told you all
plain
sorts of
English.
things you didn't want to know.
But what you
Or
can
you
use
didn't like.
AI very usefully for is two things. One is you can tell it just to check your spelling and grammar, but that word does for you in any case. And the other thing that if you have the ministry office on your computer with the Copilot inside the Word, you can ask it to format the document for you, and it does it very nicely.
Sarah has a question. Michelle, can you answer that? Oh, she said
I
she'll be in
did.
touch with you. Yes,
I'll be in
sorry,
touch
sorry.
with her
Didn't catch up with
individually.
you.
I'll
Right,
check her.
right, fine.
I'll check each of the
Yeah,
things. Yeah.
good. Okay. Right, shall I move on then? Back to the classroom. You okay with that, guys? Back to the
Do
classroom
we
writing
have a way
essays.
to check everything in the Moodle? Yes, you go into your Moodle, you look for your reports, and you can see everything every time you've entered the Moodle, every single thing that you've done there, you can see it. You can search Google to get help on how to do this in Moodle. I'm surprised you don't know. And if you don't manage, send me an email, and if I have enough people, I will organize a Zoom separately from these meetings to show you how to do it.
One last question regarding the length. Can I exceed the amount of words if I have to?
Not too much, David. Just have mercy on me, okay?
Sure, no problem.
Can you see what? Did he ask?
Exceed,
Sorry?
exceed.
Exceed.
If you want us to read it seriously, try not to. We had a
Okay.
lecturer when I was studying to be an English teacher who made us submit papers of 1 page only. Albert Suriel, if anybody happens to.
Wow, that's going back a bit.
An
Back in
old
our
lady.
Yeah.
I loved Abed Surreal. What a character. Sorry.
Absolutely.
So we had to write our literature and Shakespeare on 1 page. And it was an amazing challenge, but I learned a lot.
Yeah. Okay. Right. Do the tasks that were submitted as a discussion count as both? If it's called assignment, then it counts. It depends how it's headed. There was one which was a forum. I think all the rest of them were assignments. Yes, Amy, that's a lovely quotation. I don't remember who said that. Look it up on Google and see if you can find who it was. Um, Michelle, do you want to answer Malka?
Yes, let me find it. Right. You didn't. And I will go back and go through them again. Anybody who only has 4, I will go back and look at 1 and see that you've submitted it.
don't worry, I've been checking again and again and again and again and again from the beginning on every assignment to make sure I don't miss them. And yeah, you're always welcome to contact me personally with your name written correctly the way you see it in Hebrew or your ID number, and I will go in again and check for you for everything.
Okay, back to the classroom. Writing essays. So the plan for this session is to go through various stages, at least for the next part of this session anyway. Explanation about explaining to students what an essay is in the first place. Stage of preparation, which is beginning to write when the students are just, even in junior high, starting to write a short essay of a paragraph length, and writing and rewriting, which I'm going to talk about at some length. Preparation to writing a full essay, again in stages, writing, rewriting. Pre-Bagrut, when you're in the run-up to the Bagrut exam itself. Some tips which you might want to give students on preparing for Bagrut. And then as routinely, I've got the assignment and an activity. Okay, so starting off with an explanation. I just used the Google AI definition, what an essay is, but I think it might be useful to your students to present them with this definition, or if you like, a simplified version of it, that it's a focused piece of writing that presents argument, analysis, or interpretation of some topic, and typically aims to inform or persuade using evidence, reasoning, and clear examples. And it's something which I think it's a nice definition. It includes a lot of the things that the textbooks urge these students to do when they are writing an essay. And the first stage of preparing students to write an essay, and this is right from, even from elementary school, certainly junior high, writing just a paragraph, a short essay, a text of their own, but which is written and rewritten and polished and submitted. So it's not like the sort of short writing ideas that I gave in earlier sessions. You come to the class and you give them something on the board to do, and they write what I called 5-minute writing storms or quick writing. This is something which is prepared, rewritten, polished, and submitted. But it's at the first stage, it is in a one paragraph. Okay, Sarah says, interesting, I always thought an essay was a composition. The two words are sometimes used used as synonyms, but the way I'm using them here, and I would like us to use in this course, is a composition is any kind of writing that a student composes. So a poem could be a composition, a list could be a composition, a brainstorm could be a composition, a letter could be a composition, anything. An essay is a piece of writing that accords with the definition which I gave in the previous slide. Okay, so that's, I'm using composition to be a much wider category than is an essay. So, okay, we're starting with the very beginning, elementary kind of paragraph writing. So it starts off with a whole class collaborative beginning. So a topic for the entire class. One I chose here was how important is homework for learning. It's a very interesting, controversial topic, incidentally. Just a bit of a digression. There's been a lot of research on is homework helpful or not. And the consensus is that in the lower grades, it probably isn't that important. It becomes more and more important as the students get older and more advanced. So, and there's still some people who say it is not useful at all. But anyway, it's a controversial topic, so, and something which the students know something about from their own experience. So starts off with brainstorm. Okay, it's two brainstorms, vocabulary and content. So start off with vocabulary, and together with the students brainstorm. And at this point, they can suggest things. If they don't know them in English, they can suggest them in L1 and you translate. So they might say things like assignments or assess or assessment they might bring up any of these kinds of lexical items. And students copy down selectively. In other words, students copy down those items which they think they will use in their essay. They don't have to copy them all down. Second brainstorm, again on the board, is ideas, content. And they suggest you write up, or you may add your own ideas. Parents, whether parents help or not, and is it a good thing or a bad thing if they help? Is it a waste of time or isn't it a waste of time? What kinds of homework are a waste of time? We talked about this in an earlier session. Whether you have a quiet corner to work at home, other things you might want to do with your time other than homework, all these sorts of things might come up in a brainstorm on ideas. And again, students copy down what they think they will use. And then individually in class, they already write the first draft, and you need to instruct them that at this point, the main thing is just to outline ideas. Don't worry about language, full sentences, spelling, and so on and so on. And if there's a word you don't know for the moment, it's okay to write it in L1. As you can ask the teacher or look it up or find out later how to say it in English, or maybe use another simpler word in English, which you know. But the main thing is the first draft. And then in the next lesson, and I had a little bit of correspondence with Michelle about this. Do they take it home and bring it back next lesson, or do you collect it in and give it back to them next lesson? And Michelle said that in her experience, if they take it home, some of them forget to bring it back the next lesson, or it gets lost, or I don't know what your experience is. Michelle, do you want to add to that? And so she collects them in and distributes them again in the next lesson. Turn on your.
Yeah. I generally don't allow kids to take anything home that has to do with the writing process, because either they lose it or they get their private teacher or their brothers, sisters, or parents to work on it. So
You play safe.
exactly. I want them to learn something, I don't want to know what their parents know.
Yes. Mrs. Gordon, who is Mrs. Gordon, says, I collect everything. Yes, so you agree with Michelle. Or Elisa says, yes, this is exactly what Michelle's experiences as well. Take it home, work on it with their private teachers, and that's not really what you want. Anyway, the next lesson, so then the tip here is take them in and then redistribute them next lesson, and get the student to expand the draft into a full short essay. And at this point, one paragraph only, and this is the first draft. You're actually writing it out as a first draft, and this is the point at which a checklist is really useful. So you might show them a simple checklist like this one and talk them through it so they know what it means. It could even, certainly the ones that are used in elementary school or sometimes in mother tongue, by the time they get to junior high, they should be able to cope with a checklist in English. So whether it's correct, whether it's clear, including handwriting, but also if the ideas are clear, and if it's organized, beginning, middle, and end. Paragraphs, actually, if you look at paragraphs in the middle of essays, really good professional essays, very often they don't have an end. They just have a beginning and a middle. But if the essay which we're doing at the moment is a one paragraph essay, then it should also have some kind of rounding off at the end of it. They don't know how to check their own spelling, right? But at least they should be aware that it does need checking, and they can use dictionaries or ask you, it's just being aware. It's true of grammar and punctuation as well. They don't know how to check their own, but they should try to check. And very often, when you look back at what you've written, you see things at any level. You see things which you didn't notice before, which you can later correct. So a very simple checklist, and talk them through it, and they use it. Joe Feldman says the students have a folder in my room in which I save all their work. Yes, I imagine that's how you did it as well, Michelle, having some kind of folder or box file or something. How long's the paragraph? How long's the paragraph? Yes, right. Good question. It would depend on the students. I mean, the students are at all sorts of different levels, and one student might write a paragraph of 4 or 5 lines, another student might write one of 10 or more lines. It's really up, and you know your students, and therefore you know how much to require from them as a paragraph. Certainly not a full page anyway. We're talking about up to half a page, and for some students a good deal less. I wouldn't worry, Joe. I wouldn't worry about a word count. What does anybody else think about that? A word count? At this point, I don't think we need to do that. Next lesson. Okay, so we're in our 3rd lesson already. And incidentally, for professional writers as well, it's really important to walk away from your writing and then come back to it the next day, because the gap actually helps you see things which you didn't see before and helps you write better. So students edit and correct their own drafts and might get together with other students, join up in pairs to help each other edit and correct. And then you've gathered it in again, give it back to them, or maybe even in the same lesson, the students separate out again and individually write a second draft, which is ready to submit, and you give it to the teacher. And the teacher gives feedback, and possibly a grade up to, depends whether you're going to do a 3rd draft or not, and how important it is to the students to get a grade. Some of you wrote in your assignments that it's really important for students to get a grade. And this isn't my experience as well. Students really want to know how good it was, but it doesn't have to be sort of 85 or 73 or a really exact one. It can be a global grade using smileys or checks or simple numbers or letters. Should they submit the drafts only? Also, a good question, actually. I'm not sure about this. I think maybe yes, maybe no. Depends whether you want to see the previous draft and the later draft. In any case, if you're using portfolios, all the drafts should be in there. That's where they should keep them for later. Optional follow-up, you can then write a 3rd draft, have a 3rd draft, and they may get more feedback and a grade if they didn't get one before. So it's a process which can be a single, just one rewrite or 2 rewrites. In other words, a 2nd draft or also a 3rd draft. Yes, Danielle, you have your hand up. What would you like to unmute yourself?
Yeah, I wanted to ask, perhaps it's not a good time, about the word count, because in a sense, it feels a bit perverse, the whole issue with word counts. It makes students often just babble in order to complete the quota of words. Instead of when somebody asks me a question, I I need to answer the question, let's say about literature. What were the motives of the hero and give examples from the story. Why do I need to add this answer in 150 words? I mean, it's so irrelevant. And it causes like artificial writing. It's not like
Yeah.
unnatural.
Okay, so you're against word count. Anybody else on word counts? I never used them. That's why I was sort of little uncertain how to answer that question. I've never actually thought of using word counts with students, and I would
E-
tend to
e-
agree with you on that one.
Okay.
Every time my students ask me how many words, I say, the more the merrier. Just right. Just right. Don't
Just
count the
right,
words.
just right.
Don't
Get
count the words.
writing. Yeah.
I have found that, like grades, students often request them and it makes them feel safer. But usually I say, if you've answered all the questions I'm asking you to write about, or you've done this in the way I'm requesting, then you will have enough words.
Yeah. 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 Elisa, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I've had the opposite experience actually, like when doing one-on-one testing with Merhav students, very often they're constantly asking as they dictate how many words they've gotten up to, and as soon as they hit the minimum, they stop, even though they haven't
Mm,
completed their thoughts or you've gone through, a beginning and middle and end, and it doesn't necessarily make sense to stop where they did. So it has both effects. It can cause some kids to ramble just to fill the space, but on the flip side, and I find it's more often the case that once they hit the minimum, they very often stop despite the
It,
directions
I
of
think it's
completing the
both
so
answer.
two sides of the
you would
same
not give them a
coin.
word count, or you would?
I tend to not, but on the exams in Bagut, they are told to give a minimum number of words. So,
Mm,
I mean, they're
mm,
given a word count of a range 120 to 140 words. My very proficient students will go well past 140 and have excellent
yeah.
answers, but it really does depend on their level of
Yeah.
skill, I find.
Um, you might give them a sort of loose between X and Y sort of word count, but I'm really uncertain about this. I don't have experience of using word counts at all, so over to you on
For
that one.
kids with different difficulties, like ADHD, for example, it really helps for them to know the minimum amount of words they need to write because it's difficult for them to get to that amount of words.
Mm, mm, yeah,
And it's not necessarily the weaker students. It's sometimes the very, very bright ones who say everything in 2 sentences and don't have anything else to say.
yeah, yeah.
Yes,
Then
I
they
found those ADD kids are the very same ones though that will stop as soon as they hit their number, even
Exactly.
though they just have no patience to continue, even though they haven't answered the question the way they need to.
No, they think they have answered it. According as the way they see it, they've answered it. That's what I found. I mean,
Mm,
but luckily with I think Penny's going to get into if I remember correctly, the stages of an essay and the paragraphs and if they follow that, they almost fill up the words without even trying.
mm.
For the
They
book.
will eventually need to work with word counts because that's what the Bagrut demands, but it's uncertain whether at this stage they need to. Depends. I mean, we've heard all sorts of opinions here, and it's really over to you. I don't want to recommend one or the other at this point. The next stage in preparation is writing full essays, but we're still not we're not in the run up to Bagrut. We are in say 10th, 11th, 12th, 10th and 11th grades mainly. But learning to write full essays according to the definition, which I showed you on a previous slide. And I want to emphasize what you see on the screen now. It's not a good idea just to give them Bagrut essays and tell them to do them over and over. Practicing for a test by doing the test is not a good idea. It's not the best way to help them to succeed, and it's very boring and difficult and uninteresting for both teacher and students. Such some experience of such writing can be helpful during the last month or two when you're with them before the exam, but I'll come on to that in later slides. Better. First of all, continuous short writing assignments, the fun assignments that I gave you in earlier sessions. These are valid right up to the end. The more experience of writing they get, the better with as much feedback as we talked about in an earlier session, as much feedback as you can give them on any writing they do. All sorts of writing assignments, not just essays. Lists, poems, short letters, dialogues, brainstorms, anything which gets them writing and as much feedback as you can give them, or they can give each other indeed. So continue with the short writing assignments and also provide practice in ongoing write, rewrite essay composition as suggested in this session, but with longer individual assignments, and I'll go into that in a moment. And please come in on either orally or using the chat box to respond. I did actually teach Bagrut, and I taught Bagrut essays, but it was a very long time ago, so I'm a bit rusty, so I'm relying on you to keep me up to date. Okay. Stage one, and this is, remember that with the paragraph writing, the initial beginning to write essays, the first stage is done with one topic and everybody does the brainstorming together and then they separate up, do their writing. At this stage, the next stage, they have a choice of topics and each student chooses whatever they want. And you might like to look at previous Bagrut papers to get an idea of the kind of topics you might suggest, or compose your own. You can later. I'll show you the websites, but for the moment, when you download, or if you download this presentation, you can click on this and get to the website. No, I had it ready. I underestimated myself. This is the one I prefer. You click on it and you get straight to this page, which makes it so easy just to identify and click on. This is the top of it, of course. You scroll down, you get to 2026, and you click on whichever module you want, and you immediately get a paper that you want to see. This is not the official ministry site. This is another one, but it's very easy to use. So stage one, individual pre-writing. As I suggested earlier, sort of brainstorming, but each student does it alone in this case, rather than all the class doing it together. So again, the two stages, the vocabulary, and then the topics or thoughts or ideas. Joe says, what is the website? I forget what it's called, but as I say, when you get this, you can click on Nimrod Plus. Thank you, Dina. Yes. Okay. Basic topics or thoughts they might include. So vocabulary, topics, and remember, it's still, even at this later stage, still okay to write some things in L1 and find out the English later. Stage two, first draft, at home or in class. So each student creates a first draft of the essay. You decide whether you want them to do it in class or you want to do them at home. At home, there's always the concern that they might use AI. In class, you know they won't. I'll be talking about AI at more length next week, but that is certainly a consideration. So you might want them to do the first draft at home, not worrying too much. First draft, and this goes in the Bagrut as well. When you're drafting before you actually write out the essay, not worrying too much about correctness, worrying more about content. What are the points I want to bring in, and in what order do I want to mention them? And that they have a beginning, middle, and end. Penny, what do you say to a student writing a whole paragraph in L1 and then translating into English? I'm going to surprise, well, I don't know if I'm going to surprise you or not, but I would say fine, provided they translate correctly. They're probably translating in their heads anyway. And what you're saying, Nathaniel, here is that they're actually writing it out instead of just doing it in their heads. As long as they are translating correctly, doesn't worry me. But probably more better for them and quicker for them to write out as much as they can in English and then write down in L1 things that they don't know how to or don't immediately remember how to say in English, and then come back and translate the bits which they didn't have in English earlier, translate them later into English. Sarah says, I agree 100% with you. Thank you. I thought people wouldn't agree with me. Okay, thank you, Sarah, for that reinforcement. Okay.
I agree with you, and I always tell them to write their first draft with the points that when they brainstorm, that they should write them in Hebrew if they want to, but they need to, sorry, I've got a crazy cat here. But they need to make sure that they know how to say it in English, because otherwise they come up with these ideas that they've got no idea and they don't have the vocabulary, and then they start using the dictionary and making all those funny mistakes that we find. And so that's the trick there. But
yes, so they need to know that if they write it in Hebrew, they may need to simplify before they put it into English, and only put in the things which they can express well in English.
right.
And then teacher reminds students of criteria on the checklist to check themselves, and each student should have a copy of a checklist before moving on to the next rewrite. Checklist then is a bit more advanced than the one which I showed you earlier, because we're one step further. But again, it's reasonably short and accessible to students. I don't want the checklist to be so long that they won't have time to read it, and it'll be very tedious and difficult to go through all of it. So basically, and I'll come on to this when we come on to the rubrics later, the language, acceptable English, the content is clear, and it answers the question which I asked, or the topic which I gave, and organization, it's organized, coherent, has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And all they need to do is just check the items that they've looked at. Second draft, then they write it as a second draft, checking the points on the checklist. And then optional, and there's a lot of controversy over this, is it good or is it bad to have them editing each other? It's partly a question of learning style, incidentally, because there are some students who just prefer to write completely on their own, and there are some students who really like collaboration and helping each other. So it's partly a question of individual style, but also I'd be interested to hear your experience on this. Students getting together with partners to read each other's compositions, tell each other about any bits which aren't clear, suggest corrections, and suggest improvements. Any responses to this point? What's your experience of peer editing?
May I say, should we write or talk?
Either, both.
Personally, I found it not to be terribly effective. They tend to be overly complimentary of one another for fear of offense or simply not understanding. And oftentimes it just sort of ends up being fruitless. When I've asked them, when I've had them exchange their essays and given them a checklist with what to look for, like identify the advanced grammar, very much Bagut driven for them to do the exam. And then I took a poll afterwards to see if they found it to be effective. And the feedback was they did not. They didn't trust the feedback from their peer. And I stopped doing it because it didn't seem to be hitting the goal that I wanted it to.
Yeah. The messages we're getting here on the chat box, I hope you're following them, on the whole tend to agree with what Robin just said. It's that on the whole it doesn't seem to work very well. Most of you are voting against it. Occasionally it works for individual students.
So I would really love to say something, because if you do it once and kids don't like it, they prefer the teacher, it's very easy to come to the conclusion it's not helpful, it doesn't work, which is why I wrote the comment that, like almost anything, if it is important to you, you have to give it time and teach kids how to do it and make it part of your classroom routine. And if you go through the process of helping them be good editors to each other, and you make their peer editing part of the writing process, you may be surprised that it is more helpful for more students than what you've seen up till now.
Have you found, Amy, in your own classes that after you took them through the process of learning how to edit each other and help each other, that it then worked well for you?
I have found that, yes, but again, baravon mugubal, how do I say that in English? With reservations.
Yeah,
It's I never please all of the people all of the time, but I
yeah,
have found that when I take the time to make it be a clear checklist and that it's clear to them what they need to do, and that it is part of it, that they get better at doing it, they pay better attention to their peers' comments, and they appreciate it more.
yeah.
If it's worth it, I'm not that sure.
Right. That's why I wrote optional at the top of this slide. It's an optional thing. There's a lot of literature on this. I mean, because in general, I'm sure you've come across this as I have, the education literature is very in favor of collaboration for all sorts of things, and therefore they think we should be collaborating over writing, and it's not always effective. So I'll leave that one open. It may or may not work, and certainly it needs preparation. Yes, question about there was a question about don't they hate writing and rewriting? And look what Michelle has written there. They generally hate drafting and rewriting, but that's the way they learn to write. Yes, there's no getting around it. You have to. Maybe, yes, you're right. I think that we need perhaps to explain to them why we write and rewrite, and people like me who partly anyway make my living by writing. Um, I mean, writing and rewriting is absolutely essential. I mean, this presentation I did at least 6 or 7 times. I think rewrote it. It's everything you write. If you want it to come out well, it needs to be rewritten, and it may be worth taking some lesson time, according to what Michelle just said, taking some lesson time to explain to them why it is so important to write and rewrite. Okay, so peer editing, controversial, may work, but it needs a lot of preparation and help and education. Rewriting, definitely yes, and if they don't like doing it, we need to find a way of persuading them or showing them why it is important to do so, and that they will need to do so even in their actual Bagrut essays. Yes, Lisa, sometimes peer editing is incorrect. Right, this is what I told you in an earlier session about correction and feedback, that in the research that I did, students on the whole don't like to be corrected by their peers. It's true. But if you, Corinne says, if you practice peer feedback from an early age, it may be easier when they're preparing for the Bagrut. Yes, and again, this comes back to Amy's point about teaching them how to help each other. Possibly doing, if you do peer editing sessions, make them short, just 5 minutes of helping each other, and see what you can do. But it remains controversial, and certainly, as I've headed this slide, optional. Third draft, after at least another day. They write the final drafts on there, and then they submit it, and they get feedback and a possibly provisional, but anyway, a grade. And optionally, maybe another draft implementing the teacher's feedback. When we talked about feedback, we noted that it makes a huge difference if the student, from the point of view of correcting their English, makes a huge difference if they rewrite or don't rewrite. If they rewrite implementing corrections, they're much more likely to learn from the corrections and get it right next time. Okay, and we're on to the problem of rubrics. To clarify, I just want to say why we're working on sorry, still not quite over my flu.
And you didn't bring a drink. You're on mute, Penny.
I did bring a drink, but it's got cold. Okay, I'm just muting so you didn't have to hear my spluttering over the microphone. Okay. The rubric we're working on now is one which I showed you in the last session, and people came up with, quite rightly, with a lot of criticisms of it. What we're working on now is a teacher-designed rubric for our own use. And the question immediately arises, well, why not just use the ready-made ministry rubrics if we are talking about Bagrut essays? And I'll tell you why. Here is the ministry rubric for Module G. Now, my problem with this is that I have a lot of criticisms of it, but the main problem with using it in class is that it is simply very, very long and detailed, and we can't possibly get through it all with all the essays that we have from our students. It also overemphasizes correct, in my view anyway, and I think probably in yours as well, it overemphasizes correctness. If you look at the, not only just the length, but also the emphasis on correct, the word correct, I didn't count, but you start counting, it's almost in every sentence you have the word correct. It's sort of almost an obsession here, and even the headings at the top, instead of being very good, good, quite good, not good, it has correct, partially correct, minimally. It's sort of obsessed with the idea of correctness. And the first section is on content and organization, but that only 8 out of the 40 points. And all the rest begin with correct use of, correct use of, correct use of. In other words, focusing on correctness. Another problem I have with this, it's perhaps less relevant, but it irritates me, so I have to get it off my chest. If you look at the words down the left-hand side, you've got content and organization, you've got vocabulary, you've got language use. But if you look at the content, opposite language use, it's all grammar and syntax. And it seems to me that language use is an inaccurate definition of what they're actually looking at here. It's all about language structures, word order, parts of speech, and so on. And then the mechanics at the bottom there. So for all these reasons, I don't think that this is an appropriate a rubric for teachers to use. It's just not, it overemphasizes correctness, and as opposed to the one which I presented last week, and it is simply very long and detailed. And if you have a full class which you have to check essays for every week, you just can't use this. And if students want to know how they're being judged also, and you want to present it to them, it's an awful lot for them to get through. This is Module C, same sort of thing, right? It's slightly more, relatively more marks on content and organization and less on accuracy, but still the emphasis is something like 70% on accuracy. So ministry approved by rubrics, like the ones I just showed you, just shown you,
We have technical issue here. Is there anybody who cannot see Penny's screen that is being shared other than Masha?
We can see it.
We can see it, yeah.
Masha, I think log out and log back in again, dear. Okay, sorry.
Okay,
Sorry, it's only
now-
me, sorry.
So the rubrics which I just showed you, which I downloaded from the ministry site, are intended for assessors, not for teachers. That's why they're so long, to make sure that they are consistent in their assessment. Teachers and students need to be aware of them, perhaps before taking the exam, but because of their length and elaboration, can they be applied to all students' essays by busy 12th grade teachers? And probably not. And the other thing which worries me a little bit is that they do not accord with CFR recommendations. Now, the Common Urine Framework of Reference for Languages is the basis on which the curriculum was composed, and it should also therefore apply to assessment. But if you look at the CFR writing assessment rubrics, you can see immediately that there's one column on accuracy, and all the rest are on other aspects to do with meaning, communication, coherence, and so on. And it seems to me that that the rubric which is now on the ministry side is in a sense a leftover from the previous generation, hasn't yet caught up with the CFR definitions, and I think it probably will at some point catch up, and it will be amended. But at the moment, it certainly, in my view, and I think from your comments last week as well, overemphasizes accuracy at the expense of content and organization. So what I'm suggesting is that, yes, maybe just say a week or two before the Bagrut, yes, talk the students through the Bagrut assessment so they know what it is. But if we have our own shorter rubric, which still covers the main points that the Bagrut rubric does as well, but it is easier to access and to use, it's shorter, simpler, and more emphasis on clarity, content, and organization relative to correct language, although correct language is still important. I don't want to imply that we should not check the language. It is important in formal writing, but it should not be 3/4 of the grade. So here it is. This is what I did after your criticisms last time. This is the rubric which I designed. And what I would like you to do in breakout rooms in a moment is to look through this. You're going to go into Google Slides, and each group will have a different slide to work on. And the goal is to evaluate the rubric, including what's good about it, what's bad about it. And what I will do for homework is go through all that, edit the original, and then publish it on the Moodle so that you will have it available for you if you want to use it next year. So that's the goal of the exercise now. Okay, Michelle, over to you to give instructions, and Gail to put into breakout rooms.
Okay, so when you go into your breakout room, just notice the number. And what you need to do is the first stage is to just appoint someone to be the person who's going to share their screen and write down what people say. And they'll share the screen with the presentation. You need to scroll down and find your room number, write the names of the people in the room, and then have your discussion and record what you're saying in your slide. So first you decide who's writing on the slide and who's moderating the discussion. And second, the person who's going to write on the slide shares screen, finds a correct slide to write on according to your room number and records what you say there.
Michelle, I'm showing the rubric on the screen now. Will it be on the slides as well, so they'll be able to see it there?
Yeah, the rubric's on the slide with the comment, and also we'll put the rubric back in the WhatsApp chat, so you'll have it there too.
Okay.
I put
Okay.
it in the WhatsApp chat now, so you can.
Right. Yes, I anticipated that might not be enough time.
Yeah.
Some people will have had time, some people won't. What I would ask you to do is those of you who still have things to add, will you just write them into the WhatsApp and I'll take them from there, okay?
Oh, they can write them into
You can
the.
write them on the slides.
We
It's not
couldn't
a
write on
problem.
the
It's still
Ah,
slides,
you,
so
open.
they
they
can
don't
write them into
update
the slides later?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I can
yeah,
keep on writing. Yeah,
it's
I can keep
open.
on
now.
writing.
Okay, so just everybody has a link to the slides, their slide, and they can keep on writing even after the session, Gail.
Yes, Michelle, don't close it. And there's a link in the WhatsApp. We'll send it again. And
Yeah.
you can go in, you can add your own slide, you can add to the slide that you had. That's the beauty of the Google Slides, that they stay open like this. Just
Great.
don't delete anything,
Okay,
please.
we won't have a discussion now because it's too late. And anyway, most discussion has taken place, has been recorded by on the slides, and I hope you'll continue to do so. So if you can drag yourselves away from the slides for the moment, I want to just finish off this session with getting to a few weeks before the exam. If you have not already done so, then familiarize students with Bagrut essay topics from the Bagrut archives. And again, I've given that's the two
I mean, somebody asked before
links.
if Bagrut isn't relevant to me, then, but there's always some kind of test that
Yes, I'm sorry, Corinne, that there will be some people who are not doing Bagrut, but I have to cover it in this course because so many people, it is relevant for them. Okay, so I crave your
very
patience on
similar
that.
to the other tests, the Rama tests.
Yeah.
What are they
I'm
called now?
not familiar to them with the Rama tests. And those of you who are not familiar with Bagrut, so these are the sorts of topics you get. This is the sort of thing you get in Module G. This is the sort of thing you get in Module C, which is A2 level, and the word length. And then you might want at least to give them the opportunity to look at the official Bagrut rubrics, although, as I say, they're very long and complicated, but nevertheless, students should know what the assessors are looking at, and this is where they can be found if you want to check and get them. As I say, I have already uploaded this this presentation to the Moodle, so you can look at it anytime you like. And then possibly 2 or 3 mock Bagrut essay exams in class, giving them 45 minutes to actually do, as it were, a Bagrut paper, see how it works. And finally, I'm just going to give a few useful tips, and please add more in the chat box. Tip 1, plan. Remember to plan your essay. This is the kind of tips which I used to give my students when they were doing Bagrut. I'm sure you give yours. So here are plenty, and if you have more to add, please write them in to the chat box. So plan your essay first. Don't start writing the final text immediately. Jot down ideas, useful words, as we did in class, and then start writing. Tip 2, keep an eye on the time. There's two keep an eye on the times. One is don't take too long over the reading questions because before the essay there are reading questions. Leave yourself at least 40 minutes to write the essay, or, as Gail and Michelle suggested, you might suggest to your students to start by writing the essay and then go on to the reading later. Any comments on that? Welcome. Okay.
Yes, I always tell my students to start with the writing, finish
Great.
that, and then do the unseen.
Okay, so we've got 3 really experienced teachers saying start with the writing, so that's a really useful tip for the rest of us. Keep an eye on the time, make sure you leave enough time at the end to go back and reread your essay and correct it. Module G, paragraphs, make sure you've written at least 3 paragraphs, and how you divide them, I don't know, different teachers have different guidelines here. Leave a blank line or indent. Make sure you understand the question. Tamal, that's a really good one, and I should have put that right at the beginning. Read the question really carefully. Make sure you understand exactly what they want from you. Thank you very much for that. See, I wrote and rewrote, and I still forgot something. Tip 5: check punctuation. Check it even at 5-point level. Check your capital letters and your periods or question mark or exclamation mark at the end of sentences. Grammar, check the grammar as much as you can, particularly the verbs. It's the verbs which have most mistakes in them. Vocabulary, make sure you use as far as you can clear and precise words. Try and avoid general ones like nice and big. Dictionary, 2 tips on this. First one is use it as little as possible. We've all seen in previous sessions all sorts of examples of results of using the dictionary badly to look up fancy words when you could have managed with a simple word that you know and you know how to spell and you know how to use. So preferably use words you know, use the dictionary as little as possible to look up new words. There may be situations where you absolutely have to, but the tip is to use it as little as possible, only when you absolutely have to. Dictionary 2, this should have been. Use the dictionary to check spelling. That's one way where the dictionary is really useful to make sure you've spelled something right. Tip 10, connecting sentences. Make sure your sentences follow each other in logical sequence. Use connectors because this is what the examiners are looking out for. Conclusion, reread your conclusion. Reread particularly the closing lines. Check that it fits what went before. Okay, any more tips, anybody, apart from, yes, if there's a word they don't understand the question itself, they should use a dictionary. Thanks, Veronica, I should have added that as well. Use the dictionary to check that you understood the question itself. Check handwriting, Ilham, very, very important. Check that my writing is clear, that I can read it easily, and that the examiner will be able to, yeah, all sorts of words you should avoid. Yeah, and the final attendance as well.
Annie, can I mention something and check with you what you think? I tell them when they read it to themselves to try to whisper it under their breath, because when they read it aloud a bit, they seem to catch more of the issues. What do you think about that?
Yes. Reading it quietly so they don't disturb anybody else in the room, but reading it quietly to themselves is really helpful. Nice tip. Okay, I've missed 3 or 4 important tips here. I hope I'll remember to write them in when I do this again, if I do it again. Okay, assignment. Okay, this is choose a topic from a Baghoot exam and write it yourself, which just gives you the experience of doing what your students have to do, and you may be able to use it later as a model for future students. Many of you have already done 5 assignments, so you don't need to do this one. But this is, as it were, 5 pointers, right? A 5-pointer topic. And finally, activity, right? Fun activity for the end of the year, which you might want to use. Teach the students a few conventional as idioms like these, okay? Proud as a peacock, as good as gold, as quick as lightning, as light as a feather. Then, as red as blood. Then add any more that you happen to know and want to add, or that students happen to know and want to add. Put them on the board. And then, yes, and I forgot, I'd made this additional note. It's quite interesting for some classes to compare with what they say in the mother tongue. As quick as light as red as, what do you say in Hebrew and Arabic, to compare here, and just discuss the contrast between the comparisons in L1 and the comparisons in English, but that's just an optional extra bit. As sour as a lemon, right? And then invite students in pairs or threes to write more such idioms using as many as they like of a pool of adjectives which you give them. So these are, as you can see, of varied levels. So you can use it with 3-point classes as well as with 5-point ones. And they think about their own inventions. That obviously they don't have to be the ones that are actually used in English. They're using their own imaginations to invent new, interesting, perhaps funny ones. And then invite students to read out their ideas or write on cards, display on the board or on the wall, or write on cards, illustrate, add a drawing. Remember, we're into the end of the year here. We're enjoying ourselves. Let's also allow them to draw, display on the board or wall. Right. And that is that for this week. And thank you very much for your attention. And I have to add your extra tips to my presentation for next time. And thank you very much, and see you next week.
Thank you, Penny.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Penny.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you so much.